Greetings, everyone. I watched Sir Theist's DRF series on pagan parallels and why they do not represent good evidence for the case that Jesus was a myth based upon pagan gods. The basic defense given by the apologists is that while there might be several similarities, there are no sources preceding Christianity which mention them, thereby undermining any of their claims. I find it a bit ironic that the apologist takes such a hardline view of later sources when his own defense of the reliability of the scripture rests upon 3rd century sources. But nonetheless, the point made by the apologist is a strong one. Now, the problem with this question is that we have no definitive answer when we could have had one, had the Christian bishop of Alexandria, Theophilus, not ordered the burning of the library of Alexandria. Today, we could have had in our hands a lot more knowledge of ancient religion, but we don't. So we have to make do with what we have. When I was researching this issue, I did so because I was intrigued by the audacity of the thesis, namely that pagan parallels influence Christian beliefs, and Jesus' own accounts could have been possibly based upon pagan parallels. The first clue that started me down this road was reading the Apocalypse of Peter, a book that was almost canonized, and which contains, in whose account of heaven and hell contains a lot of Hellenistic imagery. Now onto this video. I was looking into the pagan parallels to Jesus, and if there was one case which could be made, it would have to be the ancient god of the Thracians, Zamolxis. This account comes from Herodotus, a Greek historian who lived well before Jesus. He is recognized as the ancient world's premier historian. And so in his histories, we have met two concerns that apologists frequently cite when pagan parallels are asserted. First, we have a premier historian who is reliable in what he reports, and second, his reports predate any accounts relating to Jesus. So on to his passage. I'll try to put a link to the site if you'd like to follow at your own pace. This is paragraph 94 and 95. As to their claim to be immortal, this is how they show it. They believe that they do not die, but that he who perishes goes to the god Zamolxis of Gebelexis, as some of them call him. Once in every 5 years, they choose by lot one of their people and send him as a messenger to Zamolxis, charged to tell of their needs. And this is the manner of sending. 3 lances are held by the men thereto appointed. Others seize the messenger to Zamolxis by his hands and feet, and swing and hurl him aloft onto the spear point. If he be killed by the cast, they believe that the gods regard them with favor. But if he be not killed, they blame the messenger himself, deeming him a bad man, and send another messenger in place of him whom they blame. It is while the man yet lives that they charge him with the message. Moreover, when there is thunder and lightning, these same Thracians shoot arrows skyward as a threat to the god, believing in no other god but their own. Now this paragraph is important in my eyes because it offers a concrete belief in the afterlife which precedes Christianity, a belief that was held in the Judea of Jesus' time only by a marginal sect, namely by the Pharisees. Remember, the ruling priestly class, the Sadducees, who ruled the Sanhedrin, did not believe in the afterlife. Second, the belief that the worshiper who dies goes to be with his God is evident here. I cannot tell you how many apologists I have heard use an argument to the tune that Christianity has a novel story wherein its uniqueness is proof of its veracity. Or saying things like, well, the story is so absurd, it has to be true. I believe it because it's absurd. Now, when it comes to believing in an afterlife, in the immortality of the soul, and spending it with your God, this just doesn't seem to be the case. It is not a unique viewpoint. And this account proves that. Now, regarding the account of lances and sacrifices to Zamolxis, this is different from Christian tradition. But I don't believe there has to be a carbon copy of Jesus in order to establish that pagan parallels and influences exist, because any course in anthropology will show you that either culture or religion they are rarely influenced to such an extent that they will allow the imposition of an entire culture or an entire mode of thinking without modifying certain parts of it. The most prominent example in my mind is Catholicism. When it came to the New World, the natives were forced to adopt the religion, but they still retained a lot of their pagan rituals within the religion. So that's why the Catholicism in Latin America is very different as it is practiced from Catholicism in Europe, for example. Now, paragraph 95. For myself, I have been told by the Greeks who dwell beside the Hellespont in Pontus that this Zamolxis was a man who was once a slave in Samos, his master being Pythagoras, son of Mensarchus. Presently, after being freed and gaining great wealth, he returned to his own country. Now the Thracians were a meanly living and simple-witted folk, but this Zamolxis knew Ionian usages and a fuller way of life than the Thracian. For he had consorted with Greeks, and moreover with one of the greatest Greek teachers, Pythagoras. Wherefore he made himself a hall, where he entertained and feasted the chief among his countrymen, and taught them that neither he nor his guests nor any of their descendants should ever die, but that they should go to a place where they would live forever, and have all good things. While he was doing as I have said, and teaching this doctrine, he was all the while making him an underground chamber. When this was finished, he vanished from the sight of the Thracians, and descended into the underground chamber, where he lived for 3 years, the Thracians wishing him back, and mourning him for dead. Then in the 4th year he appeared to the Thracians, and thus they came to believe what Zamolxis had told him. Such is the Greek story about him. In paragraph 96, for myself, I neither disbelieve nor fully believe the tale about Zamolxis and his underground chamber, but I think he lived many years before Pythagoras, and whether there was a man called Zamolxis, or this be the name Degete for a god of their country, I have done with. Now, what's striking about these paragraphs is how Zamolxis disappears and returns to the Thracians. Sounds like a resurrection account, right? To a lot of readers, scholars, and myself, this is what it sounds like. It definitely points to a resurrection story. Zamolxis was not killed, but he was no longer among his followers. Now, I'm not a numerologist, but I find intriguing that throughout the account, the number 3 is present. While Zamolxis is gone for 3 years, Jesus is gone for 3 days. The destination is similar. Zamolxis goes underground, Jesus goes to hell. Lastly, after much mourning from followers who considered their God dead, Zamolxis returns, just as Jesus does, and they teach a doctrine that eventually their souls are immortal and they will come to be with their own gods forever and ever in a great place, heaven. So what do we have in Zamolxis? Well, I think we have the closest we can get to a pagan parallel to Jesus. In addition to this, we have Plato's account of Zamolxis in the Charmides dialogue, where Plato tells us that Zamolxis was a great healer who didn't just heal the body, but the mind as well. And this is similar to Jesus, who is said to have healed physical diseases as well as healing people possessed by demons. So, is Zamolxis a pagan parallel? This is a loaded question, because it depends on how we define pagan parallel. If we mean that it must match our modern view of Jesus, which has undergone several transformations through the centuries by ways of church councils, church splits, and varying interpretations, then no. But if we mean that there are several striking similarities which existed prior to Jesus and could well have influenced his perception in the eyes of his followers, then Zamolxis may well hold the key to us saying that there are pagan influences and even parallels to Jesus. Scary, isn't it? Now, what this side project taught me was not that there is a definite answer to the question of pagan parallels, but that this question was so dangerous that Christian authorities did everything in their power to destroy any differing viewpoints, from the burning of the Library of Alexandria to the murder of pagan philosophers like Hypatia. This Christian tradition continued into the Middle Ages. So one can't help but ask the question, if the Christians of that time, being exposed both to pagan philosophy and their own philosophy, if they really believed that their message was unique, it was God-breathed, what did they have to fear? A lion does not need to be defended. It only needs to be let out of its cage.